you again.
And you as well.
Awesome.
I just want to see you in this setting, not the other.
Yeah, don't we all, right? Hey, how you doing?
Even though.
Doing chest rock.
Hey, Leon, awesome. Big mama. Leon, feeling there?
Here, Phil.
Yes, sir.
I passed the, I was the last school. I was down there in fact.
I don't know, but I can't wait to find out. Well, it'll be January, February. Maybe I can do it in some places. It's really hard when you do that. So then.
So, yeah,
Okay.
I got one of the parents.
Yeah, it does. So.
One of the parents. They always said you were a leader.
That's right.
I've been down to Delta.
Yeah, I think we will. Now, I don't know who should try to keep it straight, because I'm not just a good idea or not. No, yeah, it could be bad, but maybe. Oh, yes, Miss Cindy will take care of it.
What am I gonna do?
Keep these two in line.
I don't know that y'all should sit together.
See, that's what I said. Now, see what the church Miss Cindy and I had. I mean, oh.
We're gonna go on and get started in like 1 minute. Let the stragglers straggle. It's not their fault, we know that. It's traffic.
It's not the next street, it's got more traffic problems.
It's all those commuters.
And all those out of towners.
So when we just, when I start talking, we just Well, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and get started.
Morning, Cindy.
It is nice to see all of you on this rainy, traffic-y Monday morning. But thank you all for being here. I think this is the first broker involvement specific meeting that maybe we've ever done. So I appreciate you all being here. I want to acknowledge, for those of you that may not know her yet, Miss Angela Shields back there, our new CEO here at Tennessee Realtors. Thank you. I just wanted you to make sure you see her, and then I know she's going to be around at lunchtime, so maybe you'll get a chance to meet her and talk with her more. My name is Cindy Stanton, and I am, like all of you, a principal broker. I broker an office of about 75 agents in Cool Springs with Parks. And I also represent the state of Tennessee at NAR on what's called the Broker Involvement Council. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that program, and then we will continue on with our TREC update. So, many of you probably in the room wouldn't necessarily consider yourselves political, or maybe you don't really like politics. And given the climate of the way things are out there, I can't really say that I blame you. But the reality is that there are lawmakers that occasionally propose changes to existing laws or new laws or changes in regulations that can have a negative impact on our livelihood or on the rights of homeowners. And so occasionally, the National Association of Realtors recognizes those opportunities to speak out and encourages our members to get involved and to carry that message on. So you'll never hear anyone at the National Association of Realtors send out a message weighing in on what the realtors think about healthcare reform. That's not a housing issue. But you will hear, and in fact right now are hearing us speak out very strongly and loudly about tax reform, and specifically the mortgage interest deduction and how important that is, and that we realtors feel very strongly that there should be benefits to owning versus renting, and mortgage interest deduction is one of those. And you'll never hear the realtors come out with an opinion about what we should do about North Korea or what's fake news or not fake news. You'll never hear that. But you did hear the realtors speak out very strongly earlier this year about the importance of reauthorizing the National Flood Insurance Program, because we realize that for all those homeowners living in floodplains, if they can't have access to flood insurance, they're not going to be able to convey their properties. So the way that we raise our voice, and you all, most of you in the room know this, is through our realtor calls for action. And the calls for action simply come out through the National Association of Realtors to the members, and it's a simple click here and send a message to your elected official about whatever the current issue is. Like right now, the issue on the table is tax reform and specifically mortgage interest deduction. So what the broker involvement program does, just very simply, is allows those messages, rather than being conveyed from NAR directly to the member, they flow through you as the principal broker. So the messages go to the agents in your office, branded with your company logo, coming from you. And we have found that when the message comes from you, the response is about twice as high as if it just comes from the National Association. So you may find that hard to believe, that your agents are actually opening and reading the emails that you send, and more importantly, taking your advice and acting on it. But the truth is they are. About 40% response rate when the messages come from you. So for offices that have less than 100 licensees, the messages just go out automatically, straight from NAR. But if your office has greater than 100, then you have the opportunity to review the message before it goes out, tweak it, put your personal touch on it before it actually is released. Once you're enrolled in the broker involvement program, you also have access to what's called the broker portal, and that's simply a part of the site. Realtor Action Center is the website. And if you access that site and if you put in the search field broker involvement, it'll connect you to the portal. You do have to log in order to access this. It's just simply your NERDS number and the same password that you use to log into realtor.org. If you don't know that, it's easy to reset. Just click on forgot password, and it can set you up. But once you're in this portal, you can actually see which of your agents have responded to the calls for action. There's also a great newsletter there that can help you be even more involved on issues at the national level. So many of you have already enrolled. If you haven't, I hope that you will, and encourage you to log on to Realtor Action Center. And if you go to the Broker Involvement Program tab, it's a real super simple enrollment. All you need is your NERDS number. You can upload your company logo in there as well, and you'll automatically be done. There's only about maybe 1 to 3 of these messages that come out a year, those calls for action coming through you, so never will a bunch of emails come out to your agents. It'll only be those really urgent action emails. And I also have, if all that sounds like too much trouble to log in, I have a sign-up sheet with everyone that registered for today. And if you'll simply just initial beside your name on here, I can send this to NAR and they will enroll you for you. So easy peasy. So thank you all for being here. I want to bring Jennifer Farrer up, and she's going to introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Good morning, everybody. I'm glad you guys all fought this lovely weather to be here this morning. I wanted to just talk to you really quickly about another broker involvement initiative that we're doing starting in 2018, and our incoming president, Leon Dixon. This is kind of his project, his baby, and the details are still a little vague, but I just wanted to let you know that it's coming. Next year in 2018, we are going to have a broker RPAC initiative where we try to get our brokerages have all of their agents with 100% RPAC participation. So we will divide the brokerages up by small, medium, and large in size, and we will have incentives based on the size of the firm. So we're still, like I said, ironing out the details on that, but it's something that we look forward to making a project in 2018. And also to kind of piggyback off what Cindy was saying, as far as calls for action go, we are in the middle of a call for action right now on tax reform. And if any of you are not signed up for the Realtor Party mobile alerts, you can just text the word realtor to 3, and you will get those notifications via text. And like Cindy mentioned, you'll only get them 2 to 3 times a year when we do the call for action. So it's not like they're going to be sending you a bunch of innocuous texts, but they'll send you the text message when it's critical to have you respond to something. So again, thank you guys for being here, and we look forward to working with you guys next year on the Broker RPAC initiative. And next up, we have Austin McMullen, and he is a partner at Bradley Law Firm, and he is the longest serving Tennessee real estate commissioner and serves as vice chair on the commission. And I'll let him talk to you guys a little bit about his presentation.
All right.
Thank you for being
Yeah,
here.
thank you. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I appreciate you being here on a rainy Monday morning, and I appreciate everybody who is joining us by video as well. Let's see. What do I do to get going here? Well, let's see. Oh, yeah. I'll tell you just a little bit about myself while John's getting it pulled up. Like Jennifer said, my name is Austin McMullen. I'm an attorney at Bradley, Arant, Bolt, Cummings Law Firm here in Nashville. We go by Bradley just because that's a lot of words to say. And I've been an attorney there for about 17 years. And all right, that's great. Thank you. About 7 years or so ago, Governor Haslam asked me to be on the Real Estate Commission. And so I've been doing that now for about 7 years, and I have about 6 months left on my second term, and then I will be out of there. My wife says that I have too many of these part-time jobs, besides working at the law firm, like being on the Real Estate Commission. And we do get paid. If you don't know, we get paid for being on the Real Estate Commission. We get paid $50 for every day that we meet, and they do take taxes out of that. Another job that I do just for fun is I officiate high school football. And so I was talking to Phil, who's in the back of the room, and he officiates soccer. But that's another thing that I do just for fun. So I'm really into, enforcing the rules and throwing the flags and getting yelled at by people. Those are things I really enjoy. So while we're here, if you have a question or a comment, there's Phil. If you have a question or a comment or something you're mad about, just shout it at me. I'll feel like I'm at a football game, and everything will be fine. I have my lovely wife, Kelly, of 20 years, and we have 2 children who look a lot like her, thank goodness. And let's see, I guess that's about it. So anyway, let's talk about the Real Estate Commission. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do and how we get there and what the rules are that we have to work with. And then I'm going to get into some actual disciplinary cases that we heard. And my goal is to really put you in the position that we are in on TREC. So I'm going to present you with the exact same information that we got in some actual cases. And I'm going to let you share your input about what you think might have been done wrong, or maybe wasn't done wrong, or should we discipline this person or not, and take a show of hands to see, how would you vote on this thing? Because we don't always agree 100% at the Real Estate Commission. There are 9 of us, and we don't always have a 9-0 vote on everything. And then I'll tell you for each case what we actually decided and what happened. So I think that'll be kind of fun to get into and kind of have some give and take. So maybe we'll even have some disagreements in here. But anyway, I'm on the Real Estate Commission. What does the Real Estate Commission do? Well, we are an agency of the Tennessee state government. We govern real estate brokers and affiliate brokers across the state, all of the licensees. That's kind of the term we use, is licensees, because we don't want to call everybody a realtor, right? Because not everybody is a realtor. You're all licensees, though, we hope. We do licensing, rules and regulations, continuing education. We also handle insurance, and then what takes up a lot of our time are the complaints that we get, and then the hearings that we have and the discipline that we do have to give out in some cases. I don't spend a lot of time in this presentation talking about it, but I do think it's definitely worth talking about. It's to follow up on what Cindy and Jennifer were saying. The Tennessee Real Estate Commission has to operate within the statutes that the General Assembly passes. And so we are not the ultimate authority on everything real estate, as much as we sometimes think we are. The legislature actually passes all of the laws, and then we have to interpret and work within those laws. And so, I'm not here to tell you that laws are bad or good, but if there's something you don't like, the ultimate authority really is the General Assembly to possibly change a law. Now, within the authority that we're given, we do have some areas where we can pass a rule. And so when I talk about rules and regulations, there are some rules that we pass. And so you could have something that's a statute. We don't have a lot of leeway in dealing with a statute. And then there's some things that are TREC rules. And so there are some more leeway that we may have with the TREC rules. And so I just want to mention that and get it out there because there is a big role for you to play, particularly when it comes to those statutes and getting in touch with your legislators and to tell them, this is a good law that you passed, or this is a not so good law that you passed, and we'd really like to see that one changed. Yes, sir.
Are you part of the executive branch of the government?
We are technically part of the executive branch of the government. Yes, sir. We're appointed by the governor, all 9 members. And that is just a great segue. I appreciate you saying that because this is the structure of TREC. And I'll go through this pretty quickly, but Bill Haslam, who's the governor, appoints all of the TREC members. Now, everything that I'm going to put in this green box is TREC, okay? So there's the TREC members, and here they are, and their beautiful smiling faces. I actually got a text a few minutes ago from Diane Hills, who's watching by video from way up in East Tennessee. But there are 9 members of TREC. We're all appointed by the governor. 3 are from West Tennessee, 3 are from Middle Tennessee, and 3 are from East Tennessee. Now, the other thing that's going on here is that 7 of the members are licensees, but 2 of us are not licensees, and that includes me. I'm not a licensee. I'm what's called a public member, as well as Johnny Horn, who is from Chattanooga, is also a public member. So we're there to maybe give a little bit of insight of somebody who's not directly in your profession and to maybe ask stupid questions, which we do pretty often. But I look at it as my main duty is to make sure we're protecting the public. And so what can we do to protect the public? Or do we have a regulation that maybe is a little too onerous on our licensees that really isn't protecting the public at all? And so is that something that we should get rid of? So those are the members of TREC. We also have an executive director, Caitlin Maxwell. She just started with us earlier this year. And then we have a staff of about 10 to 12 people who are full-time employees who work down at the TREC office or who are out auditing perhaps different licensees around the state. And they're good, happy, hardworking people. So the mission of TREC, and there's something I want to highlight in this, but I'll read it to you real quick. The mission of the Tennessee Real Estate Commission is to protect the public through the establishment and administration of minimum requirements for candidates and licensees, effective professional education of licensees, and enforcement of professional conduct. Now, the one thing that I wanted to emphasize in this mission statement is the concept of minimum requirements. So, there may be some things that are really, really good ideas. In fact, really good standards to do. There may be some really good ideas about how you run your brokerage and practices and procedures that you put into place. But the question that we always have to ask is that a good procedure for us to require all of the brokers across the state of Tennessee to do? And so that's that concept of a minimum requirement. And so, what should we do? Should we require, A, B, and C, or as far as a minimum requirement, should we only require A? Or should we require A and B? So those are the kind of things that we're always looking at. And I respect all of the members of TREC because they are really good licensees, or they probably wouldn't have been appointed by the governor to be on TREC. And so a lot of times they come with great ideas, including Diane, who's out there listening, I'm sure. They come with great ideas about how to run a brokerage, but a lot of times we have to ask ourselves, while this may be what you would do at your brokerage, is that what we should require all licensees across the state of Tennessee to do. So that's really one of the questions that we deal with a lot. So some of our hot topics that we have going on right now, I put a few of them up here. Customer service. We want to provide the best service that we can to you all as brokers and to your licensees, your affiliates that you work with. But we have to operate within a budget. And so while it would be great if maybe we just had somebody who came to your office every day and said, do you have any questions today? That would be really expensive. So we've done some things to try to provide the best service we can within budget. We would always like to have more money and provide even better customer service, but we have to work with what we're given. Advertising is a big issue, and we'll get into some advertising complaints that we've heard and some of the issues that are out there. The real thing that we have to focus on with advertising, in my opinion, is what protects the public. Is this sort of just a gotcha by one licensee against another, or is this something that actually is maybe misleading the public? Those are the kind of things that we look at. Unfortunately, a lot of the advertising complaints we get are that sort of gotcha by one broker or one licensee against another, where they say, well, their sign didn't have this on it. And that's probably the rule. So we've been going back and trying to look at the rule and make sure that we have a rule that actually is focused on protecting the public and that is something that people can clearly understand and follow, and not a vague rule that is just confusing to licensees. Teams are a big issue. Teams are not really addressed directly in our statute at all that we have to work within. And we know that there are a lot of brokerages that maybe are going in the direction of having teams. And so that's sort of a change that's coming through the industry. And so we're looking at, what can we do to make sure that our brokers are following the rules that are imposed by the legislature with respect to their team operations. But then, are there new rules that need to be passed or not? Those are some of the things that we've been looking at there. Passage rate for pre-licensing schools. That's another issue that has come up, and we've started putting the passage rates out on our website so that people can be informed. We're not expressing an opinion one way or the other necessarily, but just giving the information out there to people and then letting them make their own decisions based on that information. The future of professional licensing. There are a lot of questions about what is the future of professional licensing. If you keep up with our legislature, you know that there is a push to eliminate professional licensing, at least in some professions. You've probably seen commercials that have been aired. The one I remember is that you have to have a license to shampoo somebody's hair. You've also seen that one, as people made a big issue about that and said, that seems like over-regulation. And so should we get rid of that as a regulation? So that's one of the directions that the General Assembly is going, is the direction of having less, requiring less of our professionals, or not licensing certain professions. So that there also have been some antitrust cases that have been litigated in some other states where some people felt like the professional board, such as TREC, this wasn't in our state though, but the professional board was being anti-competitive, and so was trying to favor maybe themselves or a certain part of their profession over other parts of the profession, and was imposing some unfair rules. So those are some of the things that are out there. And then technology. Technology is a big issue that's going on, in your industry and really across all industries. And so how do we deal with that technology? How do we deal with social media? How do we deal with the internet? How do we deal with people who want to, they want you to email them pictures and they just buy a house without even ever seeing it, or whatever. A lot of technology issues. A lot of technology issues come up in the complaints that we get. I got a text that said this, or I got a text that said that, or they didn't text me back, or just things like that. Certainly make it very interesting and difficult for us. Let's see. Before I get into the common violations, I did want to just highlight a couple of things that we have been working on the past couple of years as far as maybe changing some of our rules. These have been some of the hot topics we've been dealing with. But one of them was we eliminated the meeting attendance requirement. A lot of times when we would impose discipline on licensees, we would require them to come to attend one of our 2-day meetings within 180 days of getting disciplined. And after we talked about it, we ended up deciding to eliminate that requirement because we felt like that could be kind of an onerous burden to impose, particularly on brokers across the state. To require somebody to come to Nashville or maybe to another part of the state, because we do occasionally meet in other areas of the state, was sort of onerous. And so we decided to eliminate that requirement. Another thing that we recently did was we eliminated the 50-mile rule. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Required all affiliates to live within 50 miles of the office where they work. And as we talked about that, we were getting a lot of requests for exemptions from that because of technology. People would say, well, based on technology, it really doesn't matter where I live. I can video conference in, or I can call, or I can email, or I can text and have PowerPoint presentations or whatever. And so as we talked about that, we felt like that probably was a good rule to get rid of. Or the alternative that we talked about was to also require the principal broker to live within 50 miles of the office. So we thought, what's good for one ought to be good for the other. And so we decided, among those two alternatives, instead of expanding the rule to make the brokers also live within 50 miles, we'll just get rid of the 50-mile rule. So that was another thing that we did. We've gotten rid of a few of the advertising rules that we put in. One of them was, I don't know if I wrote down the exact language, but it required the firm name to be the most prominent name in any advertising. And we got lots of people asking us, what does that mean, to be the most prominent name? And so after we wrestled with that for a couple of years, we ended up deciding we were just going to get rid of that most prominent name requirement, because that was just something that was difficult to enforce. It was difficult to ask brokers to make sure it was the most prominent name, because we were getting ones where one person would look at it and say, well, it looks prominent to me, and somebody else would look at it and say, well, it doesn't look prominent to me. And so if it couldn't be that clear, then we decided to get rid of it. Yes, ma'am.
When y'all make those changes or whatever, where do you put those?
Yeah, so whenever we are passing a new rule, and passing a new rule can include getting rid of an old rule, we have to advertise that. We have to put those notices out. I think they're on our website. I'm not sure, what other ways that maybe we send those out. I can check on that though and let you know. But we do have to put those out, and there's an opportunity for people, if they don't like the change that we're proposing, there's an opportunity for people to write in or to send us their comments and to tell us that they don't think that that's a good change. And that's an area where your broker involvement group can get involved as well, to say, TREC is talking about changing this rule, and that would be terrible if they change that. So we need to get organized, and we need to let our voice be heard. And so that's really a good reason to get involved. Or to let us know that there's a rule that needs to be changed. We have this rule and we're out there enforcing it, and it's a bad rule, and here are all the adverse effects that it's causing, and TREC, you need to change it. So those are things that we're certainly open to and are listening to, and would love to have your input on. So let's talk about some of the violations that we see. And these are just some of the ones that kind of came to mind for me off the top of my head. Unlicensed activity. You all hate unlicensed activity, right? I mean, you all have gone through all this work to get licensed, and then here's somebody out there who's not even licensed, and they're doing the thing that you're supposed to be licensed for. Unlicensed activity is a bad one, and we need your help with that. If you see out there that are unlicensed, then get in touch with us, file a complaint. That's the way that we can act, because we can't act unless there's a complaint. So if you see something that you think is a violation, I'd encourage you to file a complaint. We receive probably 50 complaints a month on average, I would say. So you won't be the only one that gets filed if you do decide to file a complaint. Failure to respond to the complaint, believe it or not. We actually see a good bit of that. And I'll remind you, you have a really short period of time within which to respond. I think it's 10 days. So when the complaint comes in, don't stick your head in the sand and ignore it. You've got to get on that quickly and get a response back into TREC quickly, or you could be cited for failure to respond to the complaint. If you're going out of town for a couple of weeks, have somebody check the mail. And if there's a complaint in there, send in a response as quick as possible. For principal brokers, the failure to supervise affiliates. And what typically happens is if we get a complaint that's filed against an affiliate broker, TREC will automatically open a complaint against the principal broker as well for failure to supervise. Now, we don't always find a failure to supervise situation, but if there was a complaint filed against an affiliate, then the thought is this could be a situation where it was a failure to supervise by the principal. So every time we look at a complaint against an affiliate, we usually also have a complaint against the principal broker as well. Failure to notify TREC within 60 days of a conviction. You're required to affirmatively go out there. I don't know if you would ever have that happen to you, but somebody, if they ever had that happen, is required to affirmatively come tell TREC within 60 days of a criminal conviction, or that's a violation. Now, just because you had a criminal conviction doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to take away your license, but if you fail to tell us about it, then we might. And while I'm talking about criminal convictions, I'll say this. People often apply for their license and we do a background check and we'll find something in their criminal record when we do the background check. And we used to require everybody who had something criminal in their past to come to TREC before they could actually get their license. And we've done that for years, and I sat there and I've heard so many stories. And a lot of times, maybe to me it doesn't really seem to have any impact on what kind of job that they would do as a licensee. But they still would have to come and tell some story. A lot of times it was very embarrassing. And a lot of these people have really gone out and done a fabulous job of getting their lives together after whatever happened. We would hear things like, when I was 18 years old, I stole a whatever down at the store, and now they're 50 years old or something. We would hear stories like that. And so we ended up deciding that things that were more than 10 years old, we would not require somebody to come in and tell us those stories. We just felt like there had to be a cutoff for what was relevant. And so that was one thing that we've done. Failure to maintain insurance, misrepresentation, that's a bad one, Don't misrepresent stuff. Failure to turn over money belonging to others, we actually see that a decent amount as well. And then advertising violations. Those are just some of them, and a lot of the complaints cut across numerous areas as well, so it's hard just to stick them in one bucket. But all right, this is a big bowl of spaghetti, and I won't go through all of it, but basically it tells you what all could happen once a complaint gets filed and the process that it goes through. But basically, we could find some wrongdoing and we could discipline the person, or we might find no wrongdoing and we dismiss the complaint. I will say this about the process. All the complaints are presented to TREC anonymously. And you'll see that in a minute when we go through some of the cases. We use the words complainant and respondent. And we don't use that it was, Jane Doe from the Brown Agency or anything like that. No names. We do everything we can to actually keep any geographic designations out as well, so that we're not tainted by thinking, oh, I know that person, they're really bad, or oh, I know them and they're really good. Everything is presented anonymously. When our legal staff presents the case, they will present it anonymously and they'll make a recommendation to TREC. And TREC, just based on the presentation that we hear, will if we think there has been a violation, we will offer a consent order to the respondent to say, we think there's been a violation and we're going to offer you such and such penalty. And if you choose to accept that, you and you can pay maybe it's a fine, maybe it's some additional education that we require, maybe we're saying your license ought to be suspended for a certain period of days. And if you want to accept that as the respondent, then you can let us know within 30 days and you'll sign an order and that'll be the end of it, as long as you do what you said you were going to do. But you don't have to accept that as the respondent. If you really think you didn't commit a violation or that the punishment that we're offering is too harsh, then you can decline our offer and you can come and have a trial. And so we have a trial about every other month or so, where we'll spend most all day and we'll hear witnesses, and usually the respondent is represented by an attorney, and they put on their case and the state puts on its case. And at the end of that, the real estate commissioners, we vote and we decide, do we think there was a violation here? And do we think, if so, what should the punishment be? And so at that point, it's not anonymous anymore, but we actually hear the whole case. And certainly there are times where people say that, they didn't think our legal staff presented it correctly or whatever. And, and certainly there are times where maybe initially we did offer some kind of penalty, but then once we hear all the facts, we may decide there's no violation. Or sometimes we end up coming up with a punishment that's even worse than maybe what we offered before. So it is sort of a roll of the dice if you go down that route. But anyway, you can study this bowl of spaghetti at your convenience. I won't go into it any further. Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple of cases, and we'll take a break here in just a couple of minutes after we go through a couple of these. And they'll get a little harder as we go forward, but kind of dip your toe in the water for now. This first one, I called it selling to a registered sex offender. So if you look in your booklet, if you turn the page, you should have a page that looks like this that has State of Tennessee at the top, memorandum to the Tennessee Real Estate Commission from the Assistant General Counsel. And so this is what our legal reports look like that we get at TREC every month. And so our legal counsel will basically read the facts to us. Sometimes we've already read them in advance, and so we'll cut them off and we'll just go straight into a discussion. But I know you all haven't had that opportunity here this morning, and so I'm going to, for these, I'll either read or I'll paraphrase or skip over a couple of facts that I didn't think were necessarily that important in some of these. But I'll read the facts to you, and then we'll have a couple of minutes to kind of talk about what we think. Do we think it was a violation or not? And then we'll take a show of hands and vote and let you decide whether you think we ought to punish this licensee. So this one is selling to a registered sex offender. The complainant is a homeowner where the respondent sold a home, and that home was apparently sold to a registered violent sex offender. Complainant states another home in the subdivision is rented to a nonviolent sex offender. The respondent and the principal broker responded together and state that concerning the issue of sex offenders, it is up to law enforcement agencies to enforce any laws concerning the same. Respondent also states that the respondents are bound by the federal fair housing laws and cannot discriminate against anyone purchasing homes, and are also not required to do background checks on any individual purchasing a home. The respondents further state that such offenders are allowed to live in areas that do not violate the terms of their parole or supervision. The complainant filed a further statement that complainant made several calls to several departments and agencies and was not intending to file a complaint against the respondent, but was told that once he filed the question, the complaint was open. Complainant states that respondent is a true professional, and the recommendation from legal counsel is to dismiss. Thoughts on that? What do y'all think? Leon?
Something just run through my mind that these are guys who are sex offenders, right?
These guys on the picture, yeah, I found that on Google.
And you're showing them to us. Is that violating their rights?
I don't know, it's on the internet, so I just copied it from the internet. Some of them look like nice guys, I don't know. So the complaint was you sold to a violent sex offender who's registered, and so I want to file a complaint against you. I've got some head shaking. Anybody think that's a violation? No.
Not in a
Yeah.
protected class.
Show of hands. Anybody think we ought to punish this licensee? I don't see any hands popping up on TV either. Anybody think we ought to dismiss? Yeah, dismiss. Okay, unanimous. Dismiss it. Well, answer is we dismissed it. Yeah, question.
If we have a seller who says, I don't want to sell to a registered sex offender, as their right, they can say that, but as an agent, I can't make that decision. Correct?
Yeah, so the question was if you have a client who's a seller and they say, I don't want to sell to a registered sex offender, is that something that you can do as as a licensee for your client. And I would say no. Just like if you said, I don't want to sell to a person of a certain race or a certain gender or anything like that, you would say, well, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And so that would be up to your seller to decide if they wanted to go forward or not.
Okay, so I can't say, please, let me Google their name on our, they can do all the Googling and figure out if they're a registered sex offender, and then they can say, I don't want to sell to this person, but I can't.
Right, yeah, so the point is, you're saying that if they wanted to check the registry on their own, that would be up to them and that would be their decision, but certainly I think you could end up in trouble by actually not selling if there was a discrimination that was found there. So another point I wanted to make about this one is, I love that anytime that you get a complaint filed against you and then the person ends up saying that you're a true professional, that's pretty good. But the point to raise there is that once a complaint is filed with TREC, we have to go forward with investigating it and making a decision what we're going to do about that complaint. The person who filed the complaint can't withdraw it at that point. And so that's what you saw here, was this person was saying they wanted to withdraw the complaint after they filed it, but unfortunately that's not something we can do. The complaint has to be presented to TREC once it gets filed, and it has to be investigated by the legal staff, presented, and then TREC will make a decision. Now the fact that the complainant did want to withdraw it, certainly that's something that we can consider when we're deciding, but ultimately it's up to TREC to decide whether there was a violation, and if there was a violation, what should the punishment be? All right, any other thoughts on selling to a registered sex offender?
When the complaint is filed, and we got 10 days to respond, where does that complaint go to? Is it our address on file, the brokerage, our home?
Yeah, so the question is, when a complaint is filed, where does it go? What address is it sent to? So the complaint is sent to your address that you have on file with TREC. And that's why it's so important for you to update that address if you move. You need to update that address with TREC because that's the address that we use for official correspondence. And if you move to the other side of town and you don't tell TREC, then TREC doesn't know that you've moved and things could be sent to the old address. And maybe the post office forwards it or maybe they don't. I don't know how that works, but that probably is eating into your 10 days if it does have to be forwarded. So please, if you're moving, tell TREC what your new address is.
Is that the licensee's personal address or the office address?
It's the address that the licensee has on file with TREC as their office address.
As their office.
Yeah, which should be your office address. Yeah. So, but you might want to check with your licensees to make sure, check the TREC records to see, do we have the right address? Because you don't want to have a complaint get sent to the wrong address and then your 10 days runs out.
And then does the broker also get a separate notice that their
Yes.
or their licensees have been?
Yes. Yes. So the question is, as the broker, do you also get a notice that a complaint has been filed? And yes, you do. So make sure your licensees respond as well. And if there's a complaint that's filed against a licensee who's an affiliate broker and against the principal broker, then that's 2 complaints. And so in this situation, you could see that it said that they responded together. And that's allowed. Just make sure that if you're responding to 2 complaints with 1 response, just make sure you put both case numbers on there, because that way we can make sure that it gets linked to the right complaint. We don't want to have one out there that maybe you responded to, but it didn't have the right number, and now we end up having to decide whether you responded or not. So just a tip there. All right, let's do one more and then we'll take a break. This one is, I called it, Who Wants a Starbucks? And I'm not talking about, let's see if this works. I'm not talking about this kind of Starbucks. I'm talking about this kind of Starbucks. So it's a commercial, this was a commercial issue. It takes you a minute to kind of get your head around it, but I'll do the best I can. But now you can see kind of where we sit as TREC when we start hearing these things. You have to think, who is the complainant, who is the respondent? Okay, so who wants a Starbucks? Complainant's employee emailed an information flyer on real estate that complainant's company owns to respondent in January 2017 because the respondent told the employee he had a buyer. Respondent was told the flyer was only intended for the respondent and the buyer and explained that the property was not going to be listed with the respondent, and therefore respondent did not have permission to distribute the flyer or information. Respondent added his company name to the flyer and distributed the information in a mass email to brokers. Complainant provided a copy of the flyer and the information that was sent to the respondent, as well as a copy of what the respondent distributed. The information provided to respondent by complainant included a very short description of a freestanding Starbucks, Publix outparcel, purchase price $1,760,000, NOI $88,000, asking 5 cap, open to offers. A map of the property's location, some information on terms and rent options, and basic information on the property. So that's basically what the complainant told us. Now we're going to hear what the respondent told us. The respondent states that he made an initial call to the complainant's employee in September 2016 to inquire whether the complainant would have an interest in a property that the respondent was marketing as a Publix redevelopment site. Respondent states he was not aware that the complainant was building a Starbucks on an out parcel in front of a Publix that was owned by the complainant. I think we're talking about a different Publix here. Respondent was aware that the complainant had developed Publix anchored centers in Middle Tennessee, which prompted his initial call. Complainant's employee shared the information about the Starbucks with respondent during the initial call, and respondent asked the employee to send some information on the proposed Starbucks development. Over the next few weeks, the respondent corresponded with the employee to request status updates on the Starbucks information. In January 2017, respondent received the information for the sale of the Starbucks and was told up front that the complainant would not pay 2 brokers, but would only pay the broker who brings the buyer. Respondent was given a price for the asset and informed the complainant wanted to sell immediately if it was the right price. At this time, respondent discussed what would be the best way to sell the asset with an associate agent in his office, and it was decided they would send the property information to a targeted buyers list via email marketing. The associate agent is responsible for creating and sending the marketing information. The targeted buyers list for net leased properties is an accumulation of contacts from phone calls, research, previous sales, etc., and was not fully vetted of all brokers. The marketing agent missed boutique names that he was not familiar with. Respondent states the flyer that was emailed to the targeted buyers list was the exact document received from the complainant's employee and was not edited and did not list the respondent's name. The flyer provided by complainant shows the same information that was sent to respondent with photos and the map, and the last page lists respondent's name and the associate's marketing agent's name as the contact information. Respondent also provided copies of the emails between respondent and complainant's employee, and the respondent states to the employee specifically on November 2016, just wanted to see if the Starbucks lease is abstracted. I have a trade buyer that wants to make an offer. It was after that email that the employee sent the information to the respondent. The respondent states his intention in distributing the flyer was to expose the complainant's property to the single best tenant net lease buyers as soon as possible to receive the highest and best price. The respondent admits this was a mistake because the flyer was sent to brokers as well. Respondent was notified by complainant's employee that another broker received the flyer, and respondent apologized for not understanding the method for which respondent was supposed to market the property and told the employee he would immediately discontinue the efforts. Respondent states he spoke to his managing broker who received a copy of the complaint about the situation. Respondent further states that an in-house meeting was held to discuss the procedures, and it was decided that going forward, the email flyer method would only be used for exclusive listings to avoid confusion as to the agency status of the assets. Legal counsel wasn't really sure what to do with this one, and so their recommendation was to discuss and recommend appropriate civil penalties. I bring the tough ones to y'all, so what do you think about that one? Anybody have an opinion? Anybody want more information? Does everybody understand what happened?
Well,
Yeah.
it's a little bit confusing, but generally if you have a listing, you don't want somebody else going out selling it.
Yeah, the comment was if you have a listing, you don't want somebody else going out selling it.
Right. As if it was theirs.
Yeah, if it was theirs, but other people are saying that they didn't actually have the listing. The respondent didn't have the listing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's not clear from this place.
Yeah, so, yeah, Cindy.
Listing agreement to advertise, so it seems kind of clear to me that he was advertising something that he didn't have listed.
Yeah, the point Cindy's making is that he was advertising something that he didn't have listed. He didn't have an agreement with this owner to sell this property.
That's what I was trying to.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be misrepresentation?
Could be misrepresentation, right. Another area or just to kind of summarize what happened, you have the respondent call and say to the complainant, well, first they were talking about maybe some other out parcel or something like that. But then once they started talking about this one, he says, well, I have a buyer for that Starbucks. Send me the information. And the complainant says, okay, I'll send you the information, share it with your buyer, let me know if you want to make an offer, but don't send it out to anybody else. So then the respondent gets the information and they print it on their own flyer that at the end it seems like it had the respondent's name and information, and then they distribute it out to this email list. So it turns out that the respondent didn't really have a buyer when he called and said, I have a buyer for your Starbucks. Other thoughts on that one or questions? Anybody have any? Would they have liked more information? Information was pretty good. Everybody? Okay. All right, so what do you think? Should we punish the respondent? Let's see a show of hands. Raise your hand if you think we should punish the respondent. All right, I see some hands going up on TV, around the room. Pretty much unanimous. People say they think we should punish the respondent. All right, so what do y'all think? I know you said misrepresentation. It seemed like misrepresentation to you.
Well, that and, when they were told not to send it to anyone else, and they did, I mean, that's just
Red flag.
kind of, if nothing else, you have that one.
Yeah. So misrepresentation, and then also you were told not to send it out, and you did. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what about penalty? I mean, what should be the penalty here?
You're on track. That's your job. Not
That's my
mine.
job. Okay. So as far as monetary penalties, if there's a violation, typically the biggest monetary penalty that we can impose is $1,000 per violation. Now, then it's a question of, well, how many violations did you have? And so if we find several violations of different rules or different statutes, then maybe you could have 2 violations, and that might be a $2,000 penalty, or 3, you get you $3,000 as a maximum. Sometimes we also look at it and say, well, particularly like for unlicensed activity, we may say every action that they took that required a license that they didn't have a license to do is a separate violation. And so even though we're only finding violations of the needing to be licensed statute, every time they did something, so we try to go back and maybe go through the transaction and say, well, the day they listed it and they weren't licensed, that was a violation. And the day they negotiated the contract and they weren't licensed, that's a violation. And so, because a lot of times this, to think that we're only hitting somebody for $1,000 for unlicensed activity, why go get a license if you only have to pay $1,000? That doesn't seem like such a big hit. So, we try to make the penalty be appropriate. So we could also suspend, in this situation, you may not want to suspend the license. It wasn't the worst thing that they probably could have done. So maybe a civil penalty is appropriate. Let's see, what did we do on this one?
I'll take education.
Some education, okay. Well, this one, education is a possibility as well, or revocation. We can revoke a license too. On this one, we did a $3,000 civil penalty, and I put the statutory references there, but basically failure to maintain the confidentiality of information, failure to act with honesty and good faith, and improper, fraudulent, or dishonest dealing. Those are the 3 violations that we found. So it was a $3,000 civil penalty. Obviously, just to go through that process again, this person will get a proposed consent order from us, and we'll have the opportunity to say, okay, I'll pay the $3,000 and I'll go on about my way, or to say, no, I didn't do anything wrong, and I want to come down there and have a trial. And I'm not sure if they've accepted the consent order or not, but certainly we'll see what happens. All right, it's almost 10, and I know you all need to go get some more coffee and get the blood flowing a little bit. So why don't we take a break for about 10 minutes, and we'll start back at 10:07 according to the clock in the back of the room. All right? Thank you. All right, well, let's go ahead and get back started. Are we good to go? Okay. I was pumping out so much hot air that I got hot. Sorry. I've been told that we do have the ability for our other offices that are watching and listening in, that if you all have questions, I think you're on mute right now, but if you'll wave when you have a question, we'll be happy to unmute you and let you ask your question. So does anybody have any questions about anything we've talked about so far that we didn't end up answering? Wave if you want to be unmuted. Okay, nobody's waving. So, thank you. Let's see, a couple of points I wanted to make. Diane was texting me and said I needed to remind everybody that the views I'm expressing, they're just my opinions. Okay, so I don't necessarily speak for everybody. There are 9 of us up there. We don't always agree on everything. And in fact, some of the cases that we're talking about were like a 5-4 vote or something like that. So I mean, you know, everybody has their opinion. Another point that somebody was asking me about, and I think it bears mentioning, although most of the ones that we're talking about here today are cases where we discipline somebody, most of the complaints get dismissed. Probably 80 to 85% get dismissed. So a lot of them fall into that first category, the selling to a registered sex offender kind of thing, where somebody was just mad about something. They really didn't know, what they were complaining about, or maybe they're complaining about something and it may seem like a totally valid complaint, but it just doesn't fall within a rule. And we have to follow due process, which is that we can't punish you for something that's not a violation of the rule. And even though it may seem like you did something wrong, maybe, but it's not a violation of the rule. So anyway, just a couple of points there. And as we go through these, when I ask for comments, if somebody in one of the other offices wants to wave, we'll get you unmuted. So thanks for reminding me about that. All right, let's talk about the 2-for-1 special. And our folks who live around the Middle Tennessee area will know what I'm talking about. I went online, and this is like a Google street view or whatever they call it, just down the street from my house. So just so if you're not from Nashville and you don't understand this, I hope you have the picture there. But basically, they took a lot and they built 2 houses on it. All right, so the house that's on the right over here, this was the original house, and there's a street that runs down over here, and so this back over here was the backyard. And this is a corner lot. So there's a street that runs this way, and they built this house in the backyard. And under Nashville zoning rules, you can basically subdivide that, create a horizontal property regime, and you can have 2 separate houses there, and you can sell them separately and everything like that. So that's just kind of the background of what we're going to be talking about on the 2-for-1 special, the 2-for-1 special case. So let's look at the facts. All right, the respondent is the listing agent for the subject property, which the complainant purchased. So this is the complainant bringing a complaint against his own broker. Okay, so the client is bringing a complaint against the broker. The complainant states that he purchased a single-family home with cash, as is, on a 0.15 acre lot, according to the MLS listing and all public records. The lot also had an unfinished house on it, so complainant planned on finishing the house and renting it out or selling it. So just back to our picture, imagine, the house on the right is there, and this one on the back, on the left, is sort of half finished. All right, it's not finished yet. All right. Let's see. He was going to rent it out or sell it. When the complainant received the title, he was shocked to find out the land had been split just a few months before the complainant purchased the property. The single-family home was recharacterized as a condo and the lot as a horizontal property regime. And the complainant states this makes his lot much smaller than 0.15 acres. 0.15, that's not a lot of land to begin with, right? But anyway, The seller nor the listing agent disclosed this information to the complainant, and the complainant would not have purchased the property if he had known of the changes. The complainant states the information was not in the public records at the time he was involved in making the purchase, so there was no way for him to have known of the changes. The complainant provided the new MLS listing for the newly finished home that was on the lot he thought he was purchasing. So now they're selling the house in his backyard. And the listing shows that the home is now for sale. Complainant feels he was misled by the respondent and the seller and should have been provided accurate information about the property and any structures on the property before closing. Now, what does the respondent say? Well, the respondent states that the complainant was fully aware that he was purchasing only the existing home that was occupied by a tenant during the real estate transaction. The respondent had many phone conversations with complainant's agent, and or maybe I'm wrong. Okay, yeah, so the respondent is the seller's agent. Okay, I got that mixed up at the beginning. The respondent had many phone conversations with the complainant's agent, and the newly constructed home that is now for sale was never part of the real estate transaction and was never discussed to be part of the deal by the agents. The respondent provided the MLS listing that states, "Buyer to verify all pertinent information." So that's what the respondent put in the MLS listing, "Buyer to verify all pertinent information." And provided the photos from MLS that clearly show the newly constructed home to be separate from the listing. The respondent states the tax record information in MLS is a required field and is auto-populated from the tax records. And at the time of respondent's response to the complaint, the tax information remains incorrect. Respondent provided a copy of the warranty deed to complainant at closing, which states land in blank county, Tennessee, being Unit A, as shown on the plan of the blank townhomes, Unit A, so on and so forth. Complainant signed the deed at closing, and respondent states that complainant should have known that if there was a Unit A, then there are multiple units, and the complainant should have asked questions at closing if he didn't understand what he was purchasing. The complainant also signed a disclaimer notice which addressed boundary lines, easements, acreage, etc., and waived his right to any inspections in the contract. Respondent argues that complainant should have performed his due diligence to find that the plat map showed the property had been surveyed and split. The respondent also provided texts that show complainant knew the newly finished home was a separate property because the complainant uses the separate addresses of each home in his texts. Respondent feels that the text about damage to mailboxes and sidewalks as a result of construction on the new home are what prompted the complaint. The respondent also states that the closing on October of 2016, and the newly finished home is now complete and staged with furniture, and the complainant never had any issues until January 2017. Respondent does not understand how complainant could think that the newly finished home was part of the property he purchased when the complainant could see the construction going on day in and day out for months. The complainant was not involved in any of that construction, and the respondent states that the complainant would clearly understand that this was not his property because he didn't hire any of the workers to complete the construction. The respondent denies that he misrepresented the property in any way and is confident that the complainant and the complainant's agent knew what was being purchased. The respondent further states that he has learned a valuable lesson and he now understands that tax records are auto-populated in the MLS. Since the respondent cannot change the records himself when they are incorrect, he will be sure to indicate in the remarks section where he states the buyer needs to verify all pertinent information when there has been a split in the property lines in future listings. And our legal department made a recommendation to discuss. So they couldn't figure it out. Again, I bring the tough ones to you all. Okay. Does everybody understand what happened? All right, so the MLS said it's 0.15 acres because that's what the tax record showed at the time they listed it. Then maybe after that, they got the documents filed to create the horizontal property regime, but the MLS wasn't updated.
But he didn't hire any of the workers and didn't have a problem when the first workers showed up.
Right, so the complainant bought what he bought, and construction is still going on in his backyard, and these people are just going back there working, and those aren't his people.
And nobody gave him a bill for any of the work they were doing?
So the question was, did anybody give him a bill for the work that was going on? We don't know. That wasn't in what we had, but safe to assume probably not.
I would say that if this was filed, October, shortly after he closed and he realized, hey, that's not my property, or even like a month later, just knowing that, the tax records caught up and he saw that, I could see that. But after it's been several months, I would feel I would respond totally different based on the time frame of the complaint than if it was filed prior to.
Yeah. So the comment is that the lapse in time between when the closing happened and when the complaint was filed suggests that the complainant really knew what was going on. And so had the complaint been filed right after the closing, you would have been more inclined to find that there was some kind of violation and punish
Or the first time somebody comes out and start working on
Yeah, or the first time some person starts traipsing through the yard to go back to this house that he thought was his, right? Okay. I got some head shaking, yes. Other comments or points?
Well, it is, the buyer beware, okay? And the buyer had representation, I'm sure. But the listing agent, I think, failed to disclose what he knew, That being an HPR would have had, to me, an adverse fact, because it would have affected the property of what he was presenting in MLS. And we know that MLS is not always correct. And if he knew the MLS was not correct, then he really should have noted that.
So the point...
he could get scolded. He might not be totally at fault, but he should be scolded.
All right, so the point, for the people who are listening, I don't know if you all can hear what people are saying, but the point was that it is a buyer beware situation, but the listing agent had some kind of responsibility to make sure that information, if it was out there, was going to be correct. Is that a good summary of? Yeah, Cindy?
I agree, and I think if they're aware that it's incorrect, then they have an obligation to correct it.
Okay, so Cindy's point is that if you're aware that it's incorrect, it seems like you have a duty to fix it. Yes, sir.
And I think when you establish an HPR, there actually are new parcel numbers that are assigned to each parcel. So while that original parcel number was floating around out there, that was actually misused in that listing.
Okay. The point was that when a horizontal property regime is created, there is a new parcel ID that comes along with that, or maybe both parcels get a new ID. And so to use the old ID could have been misleading, I guess. All right, does anybody in any of our offices want to wave to get unmuted to share a comment on this? All right, let me ask you this. What did you think about, what is the exact language here? What do y'all think about including in MLS buyer to verify all pertinent information? I got some laughs and some head shakes. Is that good?
Not a get out of jail free.
Not a get out of jail free card. Okay. Do y'all think that's? Does that get you anything?
A lot of people think that whatever disclaimer you throw in there, that just means okay, I'm out. I don't have to. But it's not.
All right, so some people think that you can just put a disclaimer on there and you have no responsibility for anything that you just said in MLS, and you don't think that's right.
But I do think it's a good something, because I think some buyers, like in the commercial world, it's different than the residential. And so even putting that in there, that buyer verify all pertinent information, does lend to have a good check for the buyer to be like, oh, I need to be aware of something. Need to play an active part in due diligence for me buying a property.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're saying it ought to be a reminder that you do need to do your due diligence, right?
That's sort
Yes,
of
sir.
a slippery slope toward fraud. In other words, if you start putting stuff like that out, pretty soon it gets easy to take advantage of people.
Okay, so the point was made that it seems like a slippery slope going toward fraud, that it just starts to where you could just put anything you want in there and then disclaim it, right? All right, so let's see, show of hands. Should there be some kind of punishment for this respondent, the seller's agent here? Raise your hand if you think there should be some kind of punishment.
Like an actual fine, or just like a reprimand, or like...
Yeah, or was there a violation? Was there a violation? Do you think there was a raise your hand if you think there was a violation.
I think he knew that the property was separated and he didn't disclose
Okay, I've got most people in here have the hands up. In our other offices, show of hands if you think there was violation. Yeah, some hands are up. Okay, some not sure. Maybe they're asleep. Well, yeah, I mean, Betty made the point that it seemed he knew adverse facts and didn't disclose them, basically. All right, what about you think there's no violation? Anybody think there's no violation? Okay, I've got two hands. You want to make your case? Either one of you want to make your case for no violation?
I just think common sense tells you that, there's an HPR or something going on, and both parties were represented by a realtor, it sounded like. So I'd be, if I was a buyer of that piece of property and I felt like I had time to do my due diligence, and I'd be going back to my buyer's agent and saying, you could have helped me through this a little bit.
Okay, so the point.
Buyer's agent being the C&I dog for the buyer.
Yeah. So the point Price was making.
Delay on the complaint, I think just,
Yeah.
And the respondent admitted, I'm gonna do better next time,
Yeah.
And
So-
maybe that listing agent didn't advise their client as well, but I don't know if it's warrants punishment.
So Price's point is that it seems like common sense that there was some kind of horizontal property regime or something going on here. Both parties were represented, and so if the buyer was unhappy with what he got, it seems like maybe he should be complaining to his own agent. And also, Price brought back up the point of there was several months that passed between when the closing happened and when the complaint was filed. Did we have somebody who wanted to say something?
Upper Cumberland was.
Upper Cumberland, are you waving at us? What is your comment? Hey, you have a comment? Start over. No bother? Okay. No violation. Okay. Betty, you were going to say something.
Yeah, isn't it basically our job to assume that nobody has common sense? I mean,
Yeah. Betty says it's our job to assume nobody has common sense. That's a good way to live your life, basically. Now you were gonna say no violation as well.
Right.
Why?
I say no violation because he closed on the property and he could have had access to the information that it was a horizontal property regime before he signed all that paperwork and purchased the property.
Yeah.
Through title.
Yeah.
So title took care of whatever disclosure had to be given to him, regardless of whether an agent disclosed it or not. He knew when he signed those papers that he was not buying that house, and he's just mad.
I agree with that, but I also think the listing agent misrepresented the property on MLS. No, I mean, that's just not a huge penalty, but I just think there's a little responsibility there. Maybe it was laziness, maybe they just didn't update it, but that's I think the guy knew, the respondent, or the complainant. But.
So one point is that the person ended up signing the closing documents and bought what he bought, and he knew at that time what he was buying. The counterpoint being made is that it's still a responsibility of the listing agent to make sure that the information that's put out there is accurate. So, okay, kind of a split vote. All right, one more comment.
It's sort of like being in a mud puddle. There's just a lot of things wrong on both sides.
Yeah, there's a lot of things wrong on both sides on this one. Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, so let's see, what did TREC do? Well, we kind of split the baby a little bit. We did find a violation, and I think the points that the people who talked about, they thought there was a violation, that's what TREC focused in on. Is, there was inaccurate information in the MLS, and putting buyer will verify all pertinent information doesn't get you off the hook for making sure that the information that you give out is accurate. But we only did a $500 civil penalty instead of a $1,000 civil penalty, probably taking into account that, it looks like maybe the complainant really did know what he was buying and he didn't complain for 2 months, and that kind of thing. And we're also going to require the selling agent to do an additional 4-hour contracts class above and beyond the other continuing education that you're required to do. Hey, Kurt.
I can't remember what the broker's response was to that too, because they're filing a complaint also for lack of supervising. Yeah, is it a fine to them also?
I can't remember what we did on that one. Certainly, you know, the broker is supposed to be in charge of all advertising. And so, you know, if they're putting out, you know, advertising through MLS, a listing that's inaccurate, it could be a failure to supervise situation there. I can't remember exactly what we did on that one. But certainly that's something that, you know, as brokers you need to be aware of. What are your agents putting out there, and, you know, do the best you can to try to make sure it's accurate. All right, we've got a couple more. Let's go to, all right, this one I called the power of suggestion. And this is, I think, maybe a Larson cartoon or something, but, you know, customers who bought bananas also bought carrots and bread and milk and whatever. Don't you want to buy more? Okay, so this one is about the power of suggestion. And I'm not going to read all this because it's pretty long, and I'm trying to just get the most important points out that I can. But the complainant is a potential buyer of a home in a development where the complainant already owned a lot. That lot was purchased in 2001, and the complainant recently decided not to build but wanted to purchase a home in the same development. The complainant attempted to sell the lot in 2015 with the respondent as the agent, but was unsuccessful. The complainant contacted the respondent to be the agent in purchase of an existing home in the development and signed an exclusive buyer representation agreement that provided that the search was for a home in the development and the sources to be searched was the MLS. While viewing the homes, the complainant states that the respondent attempted to convince the complainant to build on the existing lot with the help of the respondent, and the complainant declined, stating that the complainant was not interested. You're going to start to see a theme here. The complainant states this idea was again suggested to the complainant's spouse and again declined, and that the complainant made it clear that the complainant was not interested in the services of the licensee to build a home on the lot already owned by the complainant. Later the same month, the complainant states that the respondent called to state that the complainant was contractually obligated to use the respondent if the complainant builds a home on the complainant's lot. The next day, as complainant was leaving for home out of state, the respondent texted the complainant, stating that the respondent had made an appointment with a builder of respondent's choice to discuss building on the lot. And the complainant told the respondent that the complainant was not interested, to which the respondent replied, "Okay, have a good trip." 3 days later, another text was sent to the complainant from the respondent stating that when the complainant signed the representation agreement, it was to represent the complainant in buying a home that was on the market, on a FSBO, or on a custom build. Complainant replied and forwarded a copy to the principal broker below, again rebuking the claims, and asked where in the contract did it provide that respondent was entitled to a commission if the complainant decided to build a home on the owned lot, but did not receive a response. Several days later, the complainant called the respondent principal broker below and told the principal broker how upset complainant was by the claims of the respondent. In that call, the complainant was told the principal broker was not familiar with the contract terms, but would review, and in subsequent conversations, the complainant states that the respondent said that the contract did not make a direct reference to building a home, but it was a gray area, and that the principal broker supported the respondent. Complainant states that the principal broker stated that complainant may have come to the development with no intention of buying an existing home, and that the firm would receive a percentage of any contract signed with a builder or complainant's choice, or would settle the dispute if paid $5,000. The respondent states that in 2014, so that's the complainant's side of the story. Here's what the respondent said. The respondent states that in 2014, the complainant contracted with the respondent to sell a lot, but it did not sell, and the listing was not extended at the end of the contract. The respondent states that when complainant came into town in March to buy a home, the respondent showed them a house in the development, and the price was over their stated budget, but the complainant said complainant could afford the home. The offer was made, but it was a low offer, and while the seller countered, the complainant did not accept the offer. In the year prior, respondent states that respondent did arrange for viewing other homes, but that complainant canceled the viewings after deciding not to come into the state. This year, in speaking with the complainant, respondent asked if the complainant was dealing with any other agent prior to the negotiation of the buyer's representation agreement, and was assured that the complainant was only working with the respondent. When the complainant came to town, the agreement was executed, and the respondent was told the complainant that respondent represented the complainant no matter what complainant decided to buy, including a FSBO, that respondent pursued for complainant and further told complainant to tell any builders that complainant had an agent. Respondent states that the complainant stated he wanted to purchase an already built home and sell the lot later. Respondent states that respondent showed many showings and states that respondent did not try to tell complainant to build, as it was not relevant to respondent if the complainant built a home or purchased an existing home. Respondent states the respondent told the complainant that the price range of a custom build would likely be out of the complainant's price range, but that complainant and respondent discussed floor plans. During the week complainant was in town, respondent states that respondent repeatedly told complainant to tell builders that complainant was represented and that it would be beneficial to have someone local to do whatever was needed on complainant's behalf as complainant lived out of state. Respondent told complainant about a floor plan respondent had built in the past, and complainant asked to see the plan. Then we'll skip down. Later, respondent learned from a builder that the complainant was now considering building, and respondent gave the builder information about the lot. And let's skip down further. It says emails between the parties showed that the complainant decided to proceed with initial plans to build, and that complainant did not agree that there was any contract for respondent to represent the complainant in that process. The buyer's representation agreement provides that the general description is 3/1 with a price range from $250,000 to $450,000. Sources to list, to search, list MLS, and provide that complainant's responsibility is to purchase property exclusively through respondent in the contract period. There is nothing in the contract to alert complainant that the property purchase would include building a home on a lot that was already owned by the complainant. And the recommendation of legal counsel is a $1,000 civil penalty for violation of Section 6213.312B20 for improper or dishonest dealing, and/or a violation of Section 6213.404 for failing to be loyal to the interest of the client, plus 8 hours of continuing education in contract writing. Okay, does everybody understand what happened? Got all the facts you think you need to know? Okay, well, think there was a violation? Let's see a show of hands first of all. Who thinks there was a violation? Raise your hand if you think there was a violation. I've got a few, maybe half. Let's see, in the other offices, think there was a violation? I see a hand, a couple of hands. Okay, what about no violation? Raise your hand if you think there was no violation. All right, no hands. All right, raise your hand if you just don't know. Can't decide. All right, I got some hands on that too. Okay, so people who think there was a violation, what was the violation if you think there was a violation? Anybody? Yes, sir.
They hired the realtor to find them another house, and the realtor tried to jump on the lot and make money off that, and that's sort of like Putin extending his territory out, beyond his borders.
Okay, so the comment is that they hired the licensee to help them find a house, and all the licensee seemed to want to do was to build on the lot. Okay, anybody else think why they think there was a violation? Okay, what about people who aren't sure? What do you think? What would you like to know, or?
When the
Yeah.
principal broker offered to let them off the hook for $5,000, that's a little shady because they never had an agreement in the first place to be paid a commission on someone building a home on their own.
Yeah, so you said that the principal broker offering to let them off the hook for $5,000 seems shady because it doesn't really seem like they had a contract to build a house anyway.
Well, they didn't.
Yeah, okay.
Contract didn't cover that. It only covered a FSBO or purchasing a home.
Okay.
Or a custom build on another lot, didn't it? Because didn't it mention custom build?
Well, so the comment was that the contract didn't seem to cover it. It covered a FSBO or a house that was for sale or building on another lot.
Purchase would include building a home lot already.
Well, down at the very end, it says sources to search list MLS and provide that complainant's responsibility is to purchase property exclusively through respondent in the contract period. There's nothing in the contract to alert complainant that the property purchase would include building a home on a lot already owned by the complainant.
So there was no contract. They were trying to get money and.
Okay. All right, so we think there was a violation. It sounds like everybody's kind of coming around maybe to a violation. Anybody want to advocate that there's no violation here? Anybody want to step out and take that one? No?
How would they enforce getting paid? Or how would the principal broker ever get that money?
So the question is, how would the principal broker ever get the money
How would
if they built on their own?
enforce? Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there technically any legal wrongdoing? Because they can't enforceably go get any money. They could sue them, but that's
Yeah.
what I don't
Just
know what
whatever
that looks
it's
like.
done.
Yeah.
Well, so let's see. What did TREC do? Now, this was a complaint against the affiliate broker. We did find a violation of 404, which is failing to be loyal to the interest of the client. And we required the affiliate broker to do a 4 hours contracts class, no monetary penalty. So we weren't wild about it, as you can see by, we didn't hit them for the maximum penalty. We just required the 4 hours contracts class. Let's look at the next one, though. We're going to get into this time now to what did we do to the principal broker. Okay, you were asking a minute ago. Because we had.
What do you do to that principal?
All right, so again, we had the failure to supervise complaint against the principal broker. So if you look, you should have another page there. It says, it has at the top 2017-027-071. And it says the respondent is the principal broker above. The respondent, so now we're talking about the principal broker. The respondent states the complainant misunderstands the terms of the contract. The respondent states that sources to be searched does not mean that complainant is obligated only if choosing an existing home listed in MLS. The respondent states that complainant's contention was that only committed if purchasing an existing MLS listing is wrong, and that respondent pointed out that in addition to not mentioning custom building, it also doesn't mention FSBOs. The $5,000 was only part of the conversation regarding commission owed, and that respondent told complainant that the agreement called for 4%, but that most builders automatically include 2 to 2.5% for a buyer's agent, and that after giving an example, stated that $5,000 would be a compromise to allow agent out of the process if complainant chose not to work with the agent on a custom build. The respondent states that concerning the meeting with the builder, the agent above did not set up the meeting, but simply checked the schedule to arrange if the complainant wanted to take advantage of an opportunity. Respondent states that the agent took the initiative to get the best possible outcome for the complainant. Respondent believes complainant thought that the complainant could get out of the contract by not being upfront about complainant's intentions, thinking that the complainant could get the assistance of an agent for a week and then leave town and do something not covered in the agreement. Again, the contract does not mention any custom building, and the work done in question was showing of homes in a 1 week period. Complainant did state that he was interested in existing homes and did not make any request for help in building a home on the owned lot, and that there was never any discussion about building a home. So the legal department recommends a $1,000 civil penalty for failure to supervise, plus 8 hours in continuing education and contracts. Thoughts on the principal broker now? Anything changed? I mean, do we want to treat the principal broker any differently? Do we think the principal broker did a violation? Anybody want to say anything? Getting some head shakes. Well, let's see, what did we do? All right, on the principal broker, we did a $1,000 civil penalty for failure to supervise, and we required the principal broker to take the 6-hour broker core course. So that was what we did. It seems like the principal broker really did get pretty involved in this one. And, also, I thought it was kind of bad when, after all the back and forth that had happened, the complainant called the principal broker, and the principal broker said he wasn't familiar with the contract, which, is probably okay to say. I mean, maybe you aren't familiar, but it doesn't look so good. So anyway, all right, let's go to this is our last one. And I call it bad joke, and I love these guys from the Muppets. That joke wasn't half bad, it was all bad. All right, so we have the affiliate first, and then we'll talk about the principal broker second. All right, so the complainant is a licensee who states that the respondent had a home advertised on Facebook with comments stating that the home was one of respondent's favorites. And if someone bought the home, respondent would buy a really cool Aston Martin and would drive the buyer to the airport to go on a cruise as a gift to the buyer, but that the spouse would have to drive herself as the car was a 2-seater. The respondent through the principal broker, the respondent through principal broker letter to respondent states that the listing was another agent's listing and permission was given by the agent. There was no permission from the seller. Concerning the cruise gift, the principal broker states that offering a cruise is a violation of the rules without certain actions to assure the legality, and that this was explained to the respondent. The respondent was then required to attend a 3-hour CE credit course, I guess by his principal broker. The respondent was also told that if there was another such incident, the respondent's affiliation would be terminated. It is hard to say from the Facebook site that this was a real offer, as the property listed was a 15,000 plus square foot property with multiple amenities. 2, the principal broker below acknowledges that this was a joke, but that the joke is a violation of the rules of advertising. The respondent accepted the principal broker's letter as respondent's response, and there was no permission from the seller to list the site. The recommendation is a $500 civil penalty for violation of the advertising rule. All right. Anybody want to go for a really cool ride in the Aston Martin and go on a cruise? Just buy the 15,000 square foot house, right? All right, so was there a violation?
That's just wrong on so many levels. Yeah.
All right.
Bad judgment.
Bad judgment. Yeah, people think there was a violation. Okay, so what are you going to do? But what's the penalty going to be? What do you think? Give me something. What?
Probably with the recommendation.
What's that?
I assume y'all went with the recommendation.
You think go with the civil penalty of $500 that legal counsel recommended? Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. What did we do? We did $1,000 civil penalty for advertising property for sale without the written authorization of the owner. Well, and I put on there what we did against the principal broker, but let's look at the principal broker. So we had the separate complaint for failure to supervise that was filed against the principal broker, and the principal broker responded. It says, respondent is the principal broker to the above respondent, and the respondent states that he counseled the affiliate broker immediately upon being notified by the complainant. The respondent states he did not know about the advertisement and therefore did not approve the post. The respondent provided the letter sent to the affiliate broker in January of 2017, which instructs the affiliate broker that he violated TREC advertising rules and the rules regarding gifts. The letter included 2 enclosures which cited the rules and reminds the affiliate broker that all advertising must be approved by the principal broker per the firm's policy, which has been provided in writing and reviewed in many meetings. The respondent states the information provided in the complaint is correct, and although the affiliate broker posted the advertisement as a joke, the respondent understands this is a violation of TREC advertising rules, and legal counsel recommended that we dismiss. So if the principal broker did a really good job on that one, as far as soon as it happened, he had already sent a letter to the affiliate that said, you can't do this, I'm going to require you to go do some additional education. If you do it again, you're going to be fired. Here's a copy of the TREC rules, here's a copy of our policy. Even though it was a joke that was not half bad, it was all bad. And so we ended up agreeing and we dismissed the complaint against the principal broker. Because, I mean, you can't keep up with these affiliates on everything they do. And sometimes there is a knucklehead who goes out there and does something crazy like this. But I think the practice pointer for each of you is look at how the principal broker handled this situation as soon as it came up, even before a complaint was filed with TREC. And that probably helped to get the principal broker off the hook. So just something to think about. Any questions on the bad joke case or thoughts? Anybody have any thoughts on that one? Okay. Yeah, principal broker complaint dismissed. Okay.
Upper Cumberland has a question.
Upper Cumberland has a question. I see you waving. Upper Cumberland, what's your question? Hold on, start over. You just came in. Start over.
I understand that it's a law for an advertisement listing of companies.
Hang on. You said you understand it's a violation for an agent to list what?
No, on Facebook, did you say that it was them to add listing on Facebook?
All right, I'm sorry, but the sound kind of went in and out. I know you were asking about listing something on Facebook. You want to try it one more time?
Is it illegal for the TREC for someone to as another license listing on Facebook?
Okay, the question was, is it a violation for someone to list somebody else's listing on Facebook? And I think the point there is that if you're part of the firm where it is listed, then that is probably okay if that's what the owner of the property has signed up to allow you to do, if they said that was what they wanted to allow you to do. But this one, they were talking about this gift of Aston Martin and going on a cruise and all that kind of stuff that was just a joke, but that was not an actual, that wasn't part of the deal. You weren't going to get to go on in a ride in the Aston Martin and go on the cruise. So, and I'll make this point also. We've tried to make the rules be a little more friendly to social media lately. We adopted what we call the one-click rule because you are required to include all this information in your advertising. Well, if you go on Twitter, you've got like 150 characters or something, right? And so, I mean, if you had to include a bunch of information in your 150 characters, you're not even going to be able to advertise the property. So for these social media and internet type of advertisements, we have a rule that we've now adopted that says as long as all of those, all that required information can be seen in one click from the actual advertisement that you have, then that's allowed. And so as long as when they click on your Twitter, the link that's in your Twitter post about the wonderful property that you have for sale, as long as when they click in that, it takes them to another site or something like that that has all the information that you want to tell them about the property, but also all the information that's required to be in an advertisement under TREC rules, then you're okay. Does that make sense? Because, I mean, it effectively eliminates Twitter, for example, as a marketing if you have to include all this information in every Twitter post. Same thing, Facebook, other internet type sites. As long as when they click, they can get to something that shows all the required information, then you're good to go. All right, any other questions?
Can I back you up?
Yeah, go Price.
You said about the Upper Cumberland question, that if it was somebody in the office where the property is listed, that they could advertise it. And I would think that if that was a designated agent representing that seller, that anybody in that office would still need to have permission from that seller to do that.
I guess we would probably go back and look to see in the agreement what did the owner agree to as far as advertising.
But in designated agency, the broker is assigning
an
agent in their office to represent them exclusively.
Yeah, and if that was the designated agent, would be the agent who would be doing the advertising. Right.
But then again, that would fall under, if they're the designated agent, then that seller agreed to allow that designated agent to advertise the best way that they see fit, and they see that being letting other people advertise that still.
If they knew about it before it happened.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they're the designated agent, then I think that's the agent who has to be doing the advertising. And if you start getting into other agents doing it, then that's something that was not designated by the principal broker, and all the advertising has to be under the direction of the principal broker. So that's where the issue could come up. I think on this one, probably it's you may have had two violations there. The offering of the gift when that really wasn't going to be given, as well as the advertising issue. We just did what did we do? $1,000 civil penalty, I think. It was stupid to do. I think everybody's learned their lesson, and maybe you can take that back to your office and share it as, don't do something like this, right? Other questions or thoughts or comments? Yes, Cindy.
A totally different topic.
Yeah.
So I saw in the minutes from one of your meetings. So
oh my gosh, you're reading the minutes? You're not supposed to do that.
Reading the minutes. But I saw where Their property management, real licensees practicing property management needing to have an addition, or as part of their CE, 6 hours of property management related CE. Can you elaborate on that? You know what I'm talking about?
I don't remember that discussion. It may have, there was a meeting that I missed not too long
It
ago.
was over the summer.
Okay.
Anyway,
I don't remember that.
I thought it was great. That's one of the struggles that we've had at our,
Yeah.
our company is, you know, licensees that want to just dabble in some property management by putting a list, you know, putting a property on MLS for a buddy or something like that. And we've gotten really strict about what we allow. And so I was applauding them at making that rule. That
Yeah. So the comment had to do with requiring licensees who are engaged in property management to have education in property management.
Yeah,
Yeah, 6 hours.
Overall 16 hours.
Right.
And 6 of it needs to be in property management.
Yeah. And
Don't you have to have a property management license or is
No,
that?
there's no separate.
yeah, and the question was, do you have to have a property management license? You know, we operate under the statute, like I talked about at the beginning, and so the statute doesn't really get into a lot of different kinds of licenses. I mean, so you've got brokers who mostly do commercial, or you've got brokers who mostly do residential, but just because you mostly do residential doesn't mean you can't go do commercial if you want to, and you know, or vice versa. And there are a lot of specific issues that come up when you do different types of transactions, and we don't have any way to designate, well, you are going to do commercial, you're going to do residential, because there aren't that many distinctions in the Tennessee law.
Don't you, if you're doing property management, don't you have to have a separate escrow account for property management?
You
That goes through your
do,
broker.
but you don't have to have a separate, there's no separate license for it. And your
So
E&O
you have to
doesn't
have
necessarily.
two escrow accounts, so is that the?
Yeah, you couldn't commingle rental deposits or
With
rental
your
with your regular
earnest
earnest money or other accounts.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's where I was thinking there's gotta be.
Yeah, so the comments had to do with you can't commingle, rent money that you've received with other money, things like that. Well, we're about out of time, and I will say I appreciate the opportunity to come and be here. I appreciate the offer to come speak to you today. I will stick around afterwards if you have any questions. In the other offices that viewed, I appreciate you all watching. If you have any questions, my contact information is in the materials, and I would encourage you to give me a call or send me an email, and I'd love to talk to you about whatever questions that you have. Thank y'all.